Okay, we're up and running again. Art Lit, artist number 3. Wow, halfway done. Isn't that crazy, guys? Crazy. All right, so first things first, we're going to be starting Monet next week. I have been asked to remind everyone that when you are done with your Art Lit, please put the stools on top of the table. All right, if you're the last class in the room, the stools need to go up just so that when the custodians come through and sweep, it is quick and easy for them. And we used to have a notice posted, it got taken down. So I put a new little sign up on our door so that when you're leaving, just remember, put those stools up if you are last in the room. Thanks very much. I think we're all done with Mondrian. So I've taken those supplies out of the closet. If you still need to do it, no worries. I have the supplies. I've just kind of squirreled them away into another, place. So send me an email, let me know how many kids you have, and I will pull a little set out for you and put it out so that you can use it. But I think we're all done. I think we're all done. You guys are doing great, man. We are right on task. A couple more people still doing Picasso. Tons of supplies left. He's still in the closet. And now we're going to throw in Monet. And of course, to start with, I went ahead and got another one of these little books. I love these little books. 2 reasons. 1, they are based on a true story, which is always nice. And 2, the artwork is in the theme of the artist. So if you have little people and you want to teach from the book instead of the PowerPoint, you'll end up at the same place, all right? I try to make sure that the PowerPoint and the book kind of overlap so that you're not missing anything out if you decide to just use the book, because I have heard from some of the younger grades that these are really helpful. They really do like these. So as always, there will be one in the art room in the supply closet. I will also have a separate copy on the art cart. So you can either read it, have the teachers read it before they come down to the art room. You can read it to launch your class. And like I said, then you can kind of, skip through some of the PowerPoint and just go right into the art project. So we have this about a little girl who gets to go to Claude Monet's gardens. And this one has the coolest picture in it. Okay, watch this. So it starts like this, right? And then, I've already bent it. Oh, Chris. And it opens up. How cool is that? And you get this beautiful view of the water lilies, and it has, the Monet sort of technique to it. Just a lovely book. These books are just so lovely. I'm always tickled when we find an artist that I can find a really nice kids book for. Oh, they had them for Da Vinci that I missed. Well, win some, lose some. Right. So that's the first part for little people. If you would like to do the book, I got you covered. But if you're not going to do the book, let's talk PowerPoint, shall we? All right. This is always the most fun of my amazing YouTube videos. Watching me figure out. Please tell me you're seeing this. Are you seeing an old man with a seriously untamed beard? All right, Claude Monet, here he is. And he is born in Paris. He's the second child. He loved to draw. He would do caricatures, which are, funny little doodles. He'd do it on his homework. He would do caricatures of his teachers. But I guess they were very popular. People in town would actually pay him to do their caricature. So he definitely had artistic ability. His dad, of course, wanted him to be a grocer. His mom supported him being an artist, and he ended up, his mom wins. He goes to art school in Paris. Yay, mom. At the time, people in art, usually men, but the students in art school, what they would do is they would sit in museums and copy other artists. So they would sit and paint the Mona Lisa, or they would sit and paint, pre-painted pictures. But interestingly enough, Monet had a teacher with a different idea. And he told Monet, who was about 16 at the time, to go outside and paint what he saw, paint actual, things rather than copy. And so Monet did that. He loved painting landscapes, and he loved painting outdoors. And this is pretty much what he looked like when he started as an artist, right? You have these very beautiful, very realistic looking paintings. people like these were being accepted by museums and they were selling, and he was making it as a young artist, doing these kind of, pictorial, pastoral landscapes. Nothing exciting, right? Ha! And then Women in the Garden. This was kind of a turning point for Monet. He decided he was going to submit this massive drawing, and it was so big he couldn't reach the top to paint it. He had to dig a trench in the ground and lower the painting down so that he could paint the top, which is crazy. This thing was giant. And he did something interesting in this painting. In this painting, he focused more on the light than the details. And you can see that down here. The grass is kind of, what would you call it, blurry looking. The shadow in the path is blotchy. The leaves are kind of beginning to fall out of focus. And he's paying more attention to the shadows on the lady's dress and the leaf pattern on the ground, right? This is what he was focusing on, not so much on the picture, the images. And when he submitted this to sort of the critics at the time, they hated it. They ripped this apart. They said it was bad art and it was sloppy painting because he was losing the details and getting blurry. They said this young artists these days, they're getting lazy. And this is a prime example of lazy art. Monet was devastated. He was broke. He'd thrown everything he had into this painting and it failed. Just between you and me, he was also a bit of a depressive. So, man, he was constantly trying to jump off of bridges and take his life, and he didn't believe he had talent. He was kind of a downer of a dude. But we don't have to go into that with the kids, right? Anyway, so he's out of money. His work is being rejected. And in 1870, war breaks out. He gets drafted into the army, and he doesn't paint for a while. Okay, he doesn't paint. But when the war's over, he marries Camille, his wife, and they moved to England. And there he met a bunch of other young artists who were being rejected. The critics in the museums of the times were giving them the big thumbs down. They didn't like their art. They said it was sloppy and unreal looking, and they refused to show their art. So these young artists got together and said, you know what, we're going to have our own art show. Museums, you don't want to show us? Well, nanny boo-boo to you. Well, maybe not, those exact words. This was the piece that Monet submitted for this big art exhibition that the artists were putting on. And it was called Sunrise, but not just Sunrise, Impressions. All right, bam, bam, bam. Big word. The kids should pick up on this. And once again, this is where Monet began finding his technique, which is thick, short stabs of color. And always, always light. He always loved painting and playing with light, right? So you have the sun, the reflection, the sky, and you can tell what this is, right? I mean, you can ask the kids, do you think we're in the country or the city? It's very clear that we are in the city, even though it isn't clearly painted, right? When the critics got a hold of this piece of art, they ripped it. They said, this isn't art. I think one critic said, I think I put it in the notes, yeah, he said wallpaper looked more real than this painting, right? This is how trashy this was. This isn't even a painting. It's just an impression. You didn't even get all the way to art. You just barely started. And Monet said, you know what, you guys, you're right. It is an impression, and it is art. It's my art, and I'm going to call this, wait for it, Impressionism. And a whole new movement was started. And Monet is considered the founder, the father, the beginning of the Impressionist movement. And the kids should know that word because we've gone through, oh my gosh, Mondrian, Seurat, Mary Cassatt, Pablo Picasso was there for a while, right? All Impressionists. We've hit them over the head with this. And this is where it started. So he and these other young painters begin to paint this way. A couple of years later, however, Monet's wife gives birth to his second son. She becomes very ill and she dies thereafter. All right? And he paints her on her deathbed. Kind of gloomy, but artists. So while personally he was, sad, professionally he was doing better. This Impressionist movement was taking off and he was actually getting some money. So he decides to take his 2 kids and move into the country. Okay, between you and me, he moves in to a home with a married woman, and he's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. It wasn't platonic, okay? And he goes on to later marry her. I don't know where her husband was. It was all sorts of craziness. But he moves into the country, and he moves into a house in Giverny, right? And this is where he's going to spend the rest of his life. He moves to the country. He plants a huge garden, and he spends the rest of his life basically painting his gardens. And Monet's gardens are some of the most famous pictures that he's produced. And again, it's this beautiful technique of dabbing paint. And if you look at the little walkway between the irises, you'll see it's light brown, dark brown, white, tan, right? And it's all dabbed horizontally. If we move up to the trees, it's different shades of green and brown, and it's dabbed horizontally. You don't see swirls. You can see all the brush strokes are nice and thick. There's no attention to detail. It's the impression, right? The impression. This is what he did. And the other thing he loved to do was to paint the same object over and over and over again. He did this with haystacks. He did it with these cathedrals. I think he did it with like a forest scene. He loved the idea that light changed the object. So if you went to the cathedral in the noon, you would see a totally different cathedral than someone who was there at twilight, as opposed to someone who walked by at night, right? It is the same cathedral, but it changes because of light. Monet loved light. He loved shadows. And he would paint the same thing basically over and over and over again. Water lilies, this is another example. He did a series of painting. He had lots of water lilies in his garden. And what time of day it was is going to drastically change the water lilies. Reflections of light, right? Quick, short strokes, lots of color. This is Monet. Okay. Now, toward the end of his life, he was like around 72, his eyesight began to fail, all right? He got cataracts, he started to go blind, and I guess his eyes got to the point where they couldn't see well, he couldn't see colors well, and so the end of his life, his painting started to look like this. And you can always tell a Monet painting from the end of his career because it goes really abstract. He really loses all of the shape, and he's just painting color. He dies in his home at the age of 86. What's really neat is the gardens he planted and the gardens he painted have been preserved. And so if you go to France, you can go to Giverny and walk the same gardens that Monet did. Really cool. All right. This is our inspiration piece, the bridge in Monet's garden. And we have, this is the same bridge. One of them is painted clearly late in the afternoon. One is painted, in the morning when the sun is hitting it. Totally different look. One is blues and greens. One is more oranges and yellows. And we're going to have the kids paint a bridge and or water lilies. All right. So that's the PowerPoint. Quick and easy. Now all I have to do is get you back to me. All right. I would like to stop sharing. Yes, I am a bad person who hates to share, right? All right, back to me. Okay, back to me. All right, so what are we doing with the kids? Okay, so we obviously watercolors, because Monet. So that means two separate projects, all right? Art room, art cart. Art room gets the paints and crayons, interestingly enough. So what you're going to do is, these are the samples that are going to be there for you. You're going to have the kids draw a bridge and a couple of water lilies using the crayons, all right? And you want all of the papers to be portrait, no landscapes, right? So keep them up and down and have them use a dark crayon. I found this works best with a really dark crayon. So a dark brown, black would be preferable if they can find one, in the bin of crayons. Dark crayon for the bridge. Okay? 2 arcs with some lines in between. Real simple. Just keep it real simple. Then underneath the bridge, you're going to have the kids draw a couple of water lilies and the flowers, or lily pads and water lilies. I don't know. Okay, maybe water lilies are lily pads. Deep thoughts. Right. So the flower part, I went ahead and did a couple of different colors. A little orange, a little yellow, a little red, just jazz it up, and colored in these lily pads, okay? And that's all I need for the crayons. because this is going to be a resist, because we don't have time to do a layer of watercolor and let it dry, and a layer of watercolor and let it, we don't have time for that. Once they've done their bridge and their water lilies, we're going to paint. Okay? And we want them to paint the background using short, straight lines. All right? This is where it gets important to get the look and feel of Monet. So what you're going to see here is that I did only horizontal lines, and I just changed my colors. Did some blue, did some green, and where it ran together, you got a nice little effect. You don't need to cover the whole page. Having a little white showing looks really nice, all right? There's no need to like try and cover every last bit of it. It should be mostly paint, all right? It should be mostly paint. But you want to encourage the kids to just make lines and go heavy on the water. I know they like to dry brush. They like to just hit the paint and go to the paper, and hit the paint and go to the paper. Really encourage them to dip in that water and get that paint moving around the picture. Okay? And if they want to put in a sun spot, they can. All right, and that's easy to do. Just where do you think your sun is shining? Put in some yellow and orange there. All right, and it's going to look like sunlight reflecting off the water. I went ahead and did some shadows around the edges, right? Kind of varied the tone of the paint a little bit. And the last thing they're going to do is paint in some trees. And when you're doing your trees or bushes or reeds or whatever they want to call them, change your brush strokes, all right? Now we're doing verticals, up and down, up and down. And that will, believe it or not, separate the image enough to make it look like a totally different thing. We have our horizontal water, we have our vertical vegetation. And then for the sky, I went really crazy with the water and just let it bleed out everywhere and basically do what it wants to do. And you end up with a really lovely, I think, pastoral painting. Don't you think? I think they can do this. Oh, so there's going to be a kid who gets done early. There's always the kid who gets done early. For this kids, give them another piece of paper. Tell them, grab some crayons, but this time, instead of painting a water scene, paint me a meadow of flowers, right? Think back to those lilies, Monet's lilies, and have the kids start a few details with crayons, right? Some flowers, a few rocks maybe, and finish the meadow with watercolors. And this picture is probably going to be more, greens and browns and maybe some blue sky, but have them just create it on their own. Right? You only need to mount one, okay? So mount up the bridges. If the kids are done and they paint meadows, that's great, but just send it home with them, all right? We don't need to mount every piece of art that they manage to produce, okay? I don't want to overburden you guys, because I know you are going to have to let these dry and then sneak back in and mount them. And remember, for mounting, if you want to, you can always go to the photocopy room. So just, grab your stuff and get out and then do all your work in your photocopy room if you can't. Because I think a lot of people are going to want to use the art room for painting. So I would hate to have someone say, I need an hour to mount my pieces in the art room, which means that's an hour a class can't be in there. All right. So for mounting purposes, please just take your artwork out and mount in the photocopy room, just so we have as much time as possible free so that everyone can get to watercolor paints who wants to, all right? Because if you don't do it in the art room, you are going to be doing oil pastels, and the project's a little bit different. Right? So let me show you the finished project here. We're going to be doing like three-dimensional water lilies with an oil pastel background, okay? Same technique, right? Short horizontal strokes for the water, vertical strokes for our reeds and plants. There is no bridge in this one. It's the water lilies instead, but it's still this idea of a theme. And I went ahead and went for a blue piece of paper. I just think it'll make it a little bit easier to fill in the whole page than if it's white. But I have white on there too. If you think white will look better, go for it. Okay, so how do you do this? There's two parts to the art cart project. The first is the construction of the water lilies. This is simple to do. I have strips of green paper, give everybody a strip and say, cut some ovals and circles. You only need like 3 or 4, right? You don't need a ton of water lilies. Then you're just simply going to fold your water lily in half and cut out a little triangle. Okay, so that's going to make the hole. Grab a couple of pieces of tissue. You don't need many, like 3 at the most, anything else, and it just gets too blobby. And then you thread, you pinch the tissue together, push it through the water lily and tape it on the back. All right, so you end up with a couple of water lilies. And you'll notice that in my final one, I did a few water lilies with no flower on them too. Okay, for the little people, pre-make the water lilies. It won't take you long. Okay, while they're oil pasteling the blue piece of paper, you can be cutting out these circles and putting a little hole in it for them, and then you can help them push through and tape. But this is going to be too fiddly for the little people to do. So you will need, I would highly recommend that you go ahead and prepare the water lilies for them. Does that make sense? Okay, then part 2 is the draw a water picture using short straight lines. Use lots of color. Right, so this is just the picture. Okay, just the picture. And again, you can encourage them to make a sunspot somewhere if they like, but it is lots of just straight lines mixing up that color. Okay, real simple, real simple. And when they're done, of course, you stick your lilies on it and you have your final project. I'm guessing that this will take the whole time because it is kind of a 2-step process of water lilies and then oil pasteling. So I don't think you're going to have anyone done early. If they are, feel free to tell them, oh, here's another sheet of paper, draw a meadow, right? But I think that one will take the full time to do. All right. So that's Monet. Hopefully he will be quick and easy and fun. I feel like we're doing a lot of Impressionists, and I think we have another one coming up too. So I might mix it up a little bit. I might switch out one of the artists, one of the remaining 3, just to give us some variety. All right, so we don't do like so many Impressionists in a row. I don't want the kids to think that's the only type of art out there is Impressionist. But you know, they are kind of, I think, the easiest to recreate a kid project from, since they are so abstract and, you know, big thought rather than tiny details. All right. So that's Monet. Everything is online. All the Google documents you're going to need. If you can't get to them or you didn't get the email, shoot me one saying, Chrissy, you forgot me. Give it to me now, and I will send it to you. I believe Monet is going to be running up to spring break. Yeah, you got lots of time. So if for scheduling purposes, if you really want to get in the art room and you can't do it in the next, I think he's primary artist up through February something. Don't worry, remember you can go past that, right? I'm going to launch artist 4, but Monet will still be in existence. All right, so you should have enough time to get it all done. I think it's going to be a fun one. I can't wait to see it. I love seeing all the art in the halls. Oh my gosh. Every time I start to think, art lit, I'm so tired of this, I walk around the halls and I'm like, art lit, this is so wonderful. So thank you guys. Your work shines. I mean, it just shines out there. And seeing it everywhere, you know what I mean? Like it looks very like, ooh, we have a good art program, which we do. Thank you very much. So keep up the good work. I'm impressed. You're all getting raises this year. I'm doubling your salary. But ping me if you have comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, dreams, hopes, whatever you got. I'll take them. Enjoy yourself. Make some great art. And I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.